Do you believe that more than 500 years ago there lived a man who was at once a painter, a scientist, and an inventor, and whose ideas still amaze the world today? Even more surprising is that while he was alive, many people thought he was a strange dreamer with ideas that no one could truly understand. In today's story on Echoes of Time, we will explore the life of Leonardo da Vinci is less than #0. 5# is greater than the man who painted one of the most famous artworks in history, while also imagining flying machines centuries before humans actually learned to fly. Listen slowly, enjoy the story, and practice your English listening with us. And if you enjoy historical stories like this, leave a comment and subscribe to the Echoes of Time channel so you won't miss other great figures in our upcoming videos. The story of Leonardo began on April 15, 1874, in a small and peaceful village called Vinci in Italy. The place was filled with green fields, dusty country roads, and simple stone houses. In that quiet village, a baby boy was born and given the name Leonardo. His father was a wealthy notary with a respected position in society, while his mother was a simple woman who lived in the village. From the very beginning is less than #0. 5# is greater than Leonardo's life was different from that of many other children. He did not grow up with his mother, but instead lived with his father and his father's family. Although he was born into circumstances that were not perfect, no one at that time could have imagined that the little boy from this small village would one day become one of the greatest minds in the history of humanity. Leonardo's childhood was also very different from that of other children of his time. In that era, boys were usually sent to school to study Latin, mathematics, and religion. But Leonardo did not have the chance to learn in that way. The reason was that he was born out of wedlock, and in the society of that time, this prevented him from entering the best schools. However, not going to school did not stop Leonardo from learning. Is less than #0. 7# is greater than. On the contrary, he began to learn in his own unique way. He learned by observing the world around him. He watched how trees moved in the wind, how birds flew across the sky, and how light changed at different times of the day. For Leonardo, the whole world was like a giant book waiting to be discovered. From a young age, Leonardo was known as an extremely curious child. He could sit for hours just watching a bird flying across the sky or observing the water flowing in the river near the village. While other children were playing, Leonardo was thinking and asking countless questions. Why can birds fly? What makes water always flow in one direction? Why does sunlight create shadows of different lengths? Is less than #0. 7# is greater than. These questions might have seemed strange to the adults around him, but for Leonardo, they were simply his way of learning. He did not accept the world only as it appeared to the eye. Instead, he always wanted to understand what was hidden behind every phenomenon. This endless curiosity eventually became the fire that guided the course of his entire life. Besides observing the world around him, Leonardo also showed a clear passion from a very young age, drawing. He drew everything he saw: horses in the fields, leaves on the trees, and the faces of people in the village. His drawings were not only beautiful, but also incredibly vivid, as if he was trying to capture exactly how the world worked. Leonardo's father quickly recognized this special talent is less than #0. 7# is greater than he understood that his son was not an ordinary child. So he decided to take Leonardo away from the small village of Vinci and bring him to Florence, one of the greatest centers of art in Italy at that time. It was an important decision because it opened the door for Leonardo to enter the world of artists and great ideas. Around the age of 14, Leonardo began his apprenticeship in the workshop of Andrea del Verrocchio, a famous artist in Florence. At that time, an art workshop was not only a place for painting, but also something like a large school for young artists. There, Leonardo learned many different skills. He learned how to mix colors, how to paint light and shadow, how to carve stone, and how to work with metal. In addition is less than #0. 5# is greater than. He also studied architecture and design. Every day in the workshop was an opportunity for Leonardo to discover something new. But what made him different from the other students was that he did not only want to learn how to create art, he also wanted to understand more deeply the world that art was trying to represent. One day, Verrocchio was working on a large painting that depicted the scene of the baptism of Jesus. He gave Leonardo a small task to paint an angel standing in the corner of the picture. It was only a very small part of the artwork, but Leonardo put a great deal of care and effort into it. When the painting was finished, everyone in the workshop was amazed. Is less than #0. 7# is greater than the angel that Leonardo painted, looked far more lively and gentle than the other parts of the painting. There's a famous story that says when Verrocchio saw the section painted by his student, he realized that Leonardo's talent had surpassed his own. Some people even say that after that day, Verrocchio decided never to paint again. Although this story may only be a legend, is less than #0. 5# is greater than it shows that Leonardo had already revealed his extraordinary talent at a very early stage. However, painting was not the only thing that fascinated Leonardo. He wanted to understand how the human body truly worked. So he began to study anatomy. This was not simple at that time. Leonardo often went to hospitals and secretly studied the bodies of people who had passed away. He carefully drew every muscle, every joint, and every internal organ of the body. These drawings were not only accurate but also incredibly detailed. Is less than #0. 7# is greater than. Through this work, Leonardo gained a deeper understanding of how the human body moves, how muscles function, and how the heart pumps blood. His studies were later considered one of the important advances in the history of science. In his notebooks, Leonardo recorded thousands of ideas, drawings, and observations about the world. But there was something very unusual about the way he wrote. Instead of writing from left to right, like most people, Leonardo wrote from right to left, as if the words were reflected in a mirror. Many people call this mirror writing. Even today, researchers are not completely certain why he wrote in this way. Is less than #0. 7# is greater than. Some believe he wanted to keep his ideas secret. Others think that because Leonardo was left-handed, writing this way was simply easier for him. Whatever the reason, those notebooks have become an enormous treasure of knowledge, revealing a mind that was constantly thinking and exploring. Although Leonardo was incredibly talented, he had a habit that often disappointed many people. He frequently started many projects but rarely finished them all. A painting might be worked on for years and then left unfinished when a new idea appeared. For the people who hired him, this was a serious problem. They wanted their projects to be completed on time. But Leonardo could not stop his mind from chasing new questions. Is less than hash 0. 7 hash is greater than. He always wanted to experiment, to explore, and to understand something more. Sometimes this made others think he lacked discipline, but in reality, it was simply the sign of a mind overflowing with ideas and never willing to stop. In the late 1480s, Leonardo left Florence and moved to the city of Milan in northern Italy. There, he worked for a very powerful man, the Duke of Milan. To obtain this position, Leonardo even wrote a long letter in which he did not only describe his ability as a painter, but also explained that he could design bridges, weapons, and many kinds of machines. The Duke was impressed and allowed Leonardo to work in his court. Is less than hash 0. 7 hash is greater than. During his time in Milan, Leonardo helped design buildings, organized grand festivals for the royal court, and studied many engineering ideas. Yet deep in his mind, he always carried a special dream, a dream that had followed him since childhood, the dream of flying into the sky like the birds. Leonardo was deeply fascinated by birds. He could spend hours simply watching the way they glided through the sky. He paid attention to every small detail, how their wings spread, how they changed direction, and how they landed on the ground. Leonardo did not only observe with his eyes, but also thought with the mind of a scientist. He believed that flying was not magic, but a law of nature. If humans could understand that law is less than hash 0, 5 hash is greater than then, we too could fly like birds. So Leonardo began to write down and sketch everything he observed. Gradually, his notebooks became filled with drawings of wings, the movement of air, and bold ideas about flying machines. From his observations, Leonardo began designing flying machines. One of his most famous designs was a device with large wings similar to those of a bird, made from wood and fabric. The person operating the machine would lie on it and use their arms and legs to move the wings. In addition, Leonardo also drew a design that looked very much like a modern helicopter, with a large rotating blade on top. Is less than hash 0. 7 hash is greater than. He even imagined devices such as a parachute and a glider. What is truly astonishing is that these ideas appeared at a time when humans still knew very little about the science of flight. We do not know for certain whether Leonardo ever built or tested these machines, but it is clear that his imagination was hundreds of years ahead of his time. During his time in Milan, Leonardo also began working on one of his most important masterpieces, the painting The Last Supper. The artwork shows the moment when Jesus sits with his 12 disciples during the final meal before his betrayal. Leonardo worked on this painting for about 3 years. It was created on the wall of a large monastery and was enormous in size. Instead of using the traditional method of painting on wet plaster is less than hash 0, 5 hash is greater than, Leonardo experimented with a new technique. Unfortunately, this method caused the painting to begin deteriorating after only a short time. Even so, the composition, the emotions, and the vivid expressions of each figure made The Last Supper one of the most famous works of art in history. In 1503, Leonardo returned to Florence when he was 51 years old. By this time, his name was already known by many people. Yet his life was not as wealthy as others might have imagined, because he often did not finish many of his projects. He sometimes did not receive full payment for his work. However, During this period, a special opportunity appeared is less than #0. 7 is greater than A. Wealthy merchant named Francesco del Giocondo came to Leonardo and asked him to paint a portrait of his wife. The woman's name was Lisa Gherardini. At first, it seemed like an ordinary portrait, but Leonardo would transform it into one of the most mysterious and famous works in the history of art. Leonardo began painting Lisa's portrait with a very different approach from other artists. He did not only want to paint the face of a woman, but also to capture the emotion and life within her. In the painting, Lisa sits quietly with her hands gently resting together. Behind her is a strange landscape with winding roads, distant mountains, and rivers that seem to flow like something in a dream is less than #0. 7 is greater than, but the detail that attracts the most attention is her smile. It is not a clear or obvious smile, but a very subtle and mysterious expression that makes viewers constantly wonder what she might be thinking. From the moment the painting was first seen, many people felt drawn to that unusual smile. Some believed that Mona Lisa was gently smiling, while others felt that she looked serious or even a little sad. This ambiguity is what makes the painting feel so alive. When you look at her face from different angles, her expression seems to change. Leonardo used light and shadow with incredible subtlety to create this effect. Because of this is less than #0. 5 is greater than the Mona Lisa has become one of the most mysterious portraits in the history of art. And even today, millions of people visit museums just to look at that famous smile. Strangely, Leonardo never delivered the Mona Lisa painting to the person who had originally commissioned it. Instead, he kept the painting with him for many years. Some researchers believe that he continued to revise and refine it throughout his life. Perhaps Leonardo felt that the painting was never truly perfect. It is also possible that he loved the work so much that he did not want to part with it. Whatever the reason is less than #0, 5 is greater than the Mona Lisa became a companion to Leonardo on many of his journeys. Later, when the painting was brought to France and displayed at the Louvre Museum, it quickly became the most famous painting in the world. In the years that followed, Leonardo did not stay in one place for very long. He moved from one city to another and worked for many different leaders. The world around him at that time was also full of turmoil, with wars between powerful cities and ruling families. Leonardo was asked to design many things, from weapons of war to bridges and defensive structures. However, even while working in such a complex political environment is less than #0. 5 is greater than Leonardo never lost his passion for learning. He continued to write, draw, and think about how the world worked. For him, knowledge was always more important than money or power. By the year 1516, Leonardo was 64 years old, and his health had begun to decline. His right hand became paralyzed, which meant he could no longer paint the way he once had. However, his mind remained sharp and active. Around that time, King Francis I of France had heard many stories about Leonardo's extraordinary talent and decided to invite him to live in France is less than #0. 7 is greater than. The king provided him with a beautiful house near the royal palace and treated him with great respect. Leonardo brought with him his precious notebooks, which contained thousands of drawings and ideas that he had collected throughout his life. Leonardo spent the final years of his life in the town of Amboise in France. His life at that time was much quieter than in earlier years. He spent his days talking with the king, reflecting on his ideas, and revisiting his earlier works. Some of his most important paintings were still with him then, including the Mona Lisa. Although he could no longer paint very much, Leonardo continued to think about science. Art is less than #0, 5# is greater than, and the natural world. It can be said that even as his body grew weaker, his curiosity never faded. On May 20, 1520, Leonardo da Vinci passed away at the age of 67. There is a famous story that says King Francis I was by his side during his final moments. Although we cannot be completely certain whether that story is entirely true, what is certain is that Leonardo died with the respect and admiration of many people. His life was not always easy. He did not study in the best schools. He was often criticized for not finishing his work as less than #0, 5# is greater than, and many of his ideas were considered strange. Yet those very things helped shape the extraordinary person he became. After Leonardo passed away, the world gradually began to recognize the true scale of what he had left behind. His anatomical drawings were so accurate that many modern scientists are still amazed by them. His designs for flying machines, even though they were created hundreds of years ago, show a remarkable similarity to the principles of aviation developed much later. Meanwhile, his less than #0, 5# is greater than paintings such as the Mona Lisa and the Last Supper became enduring symbols of world art. Leonardo was not only a painter, but also a scientist, an engineer, an inventor, and a man who was endlessly curious about everything around him. When we look back at the life of Leonardo da Vinci, what impresses us most is not only his talent, but also his endless spirit of learning. He never stopped asking questions about the world. He was never afraid to try new ideas, even when others believed they were too strange. Perhaps that is why, more than 500 years later, the name Leonardo da Vinci still echoes through history. And here at Echoes of Time is less than #0, 5# is greater than. We will continue exploring the stories of extraordinary people like him. If you enjoy learning English and discovering history through stories like this, share your thoughts in the comments and follow the channel so you can join us in meeting many more great figures in the stories to come.